All right, hey everybody, what's up? Welcome to tonight's show. Welcome to Comic Book Radio. I am your host, Peter Cimetti, and tonight's topic is, I think, an interesting one, but it's going to hopefully not seem that interesting. And what I mean by that is that tonight I'm going to be talking about a couple of things that I think should be painfully obvious, glaringly obvious. But these are things that I am going to be discussing based off of the fact of the past, especially last week, but the past 2 weeks of comic book radio shows. Last week, I discussed a bunch of different things with pitches that were submitted via a tweet that I had put out. And then the previous week before that, I had touched upon a few other things as well regarding submissions and creating comics and whatnot. I'm going to be talking about a couple things tonight based on that. But this is just some very, very obvious advice. But I think it might need to be said based on some of the things that came my way after last week's show. So before we start, Alejandro, what's up? This is an earlier comment in the day. Says, hi Pete, I've been binging your latest videos, extremely insightful as always. Says, too bad you go live at my 2 a.m. Alejandro, I believe, is in the UK. Said, I will watch this on replay. Well, thank you, Alejandro. Appreciate that. And yeah, get some sleep. You don't stay up till 2 a.m. to watch this. Unless, of course, you're already up. And then feel free to say hello. So you guys can see here is the link pinned to the top of the chat to join the show. If you've got a question, comment about tonight's topic, please feel free. Ross Wolf in the chat. Penelope McQueen. Let's see. We have... Penelope McQueen says, never mind, sorry, my video is muted. But not mine. There's Creators Outlet says, hail nerds. Ross Wolf says, I hear him. I hope so. Otherwise, I have to explain that whole intro again. Norin Rat and talk about painfully obvious. Looking forward to hearing what not to do. Always good advice. Absolutely. And I'm not going to try to be mean or anything about this. I don't really try to be mean about this kind of stuff, but I do see a lot of this. That's why I'm bringing it up. If I saw, one or two different things to talk about, I wouldn't really mention this, but I'm seeing a consistent pattern. And after last week, there was a lot of you out there. If you did respond to that tweet with your pitch, a lot of you out there were very gracious with how you handled some of the critiques that were given your way. I think the highest score was an 8 out of 10. But then there was a few of you out there that even though a couple of you were still gracious about it, I felt there was a couple things that needed to be addressed. Some overstepping of certain bounds, and then there was some people who also felt it was a... what's the right way to say this? In some ways it was the green... I gave the green light to essentially cut in line at the alternate submission process and send something in. In one particular strange case, it was a little jarring. I got somebody that said, and I'm all written down. I'm gonna go concisely with this in just a moment. But this one in particular, I've only had this happen a few other times before, but this one took me so back that I felt that I should talk about it. The individual had asked me and this happens quite often, I either get a DM or a tweet that's as blunt as this. Can you retweet this? And it'll be their project, their book, their whatever. That's a hell of a pitch. But then they went above and beyond and they sent me an email to retweet and then to also have them on the show. And I take a look at their account, and they don't really retweet anybody. They just talk about their own stuff, which is perfectly fine. And then they have a YouTube channel, but they don't make any videos on there. They just had the trailer to their campaign. And then in the same breath of that email, they were pitching, essentially pitching stories to me to publish for Alterna. And now their campaign it doesn't look too bad, but their campaign is kind of struggling. So it's a very odd thing for me to see a pitch like that, so heavy-handed, that's essentially telling me, now I've seen a lot of these things over the years, and I know you guys have too, it's essentially telling me, hey, you have a larger platform that I would like to use, and I would essentially like to use the people who are watching, following you, purchase from you, and I want them to purchase from me. That's what people are saying, essentially, when they go, look, I don't really know who you are, but can I use you to make money? It's a little bit of a strange request. So I'm going to address that a little bit more concisely tonight, but that one was above and beyond. I couldn't believe that after last week. I felt like, man, this is why we can't have nice things. So tonight I'm going to be talking about that and a couple other things as well. Ross Wolf says, Pete's not mean, he's just a New Englander. The difference is intent. I appreciate that, Ross. Randy says, hello. So does Dr. Mask. All right, so I have a bunch of things written down over here. Let's see. Let me get to these. All right. So if you see me looking down here and then throughout the show, it looks like I'm reading something. I am reading something. So the first one I want to get to is this. Now, these are all based off of what had occurred over the past week or two with this show. Again, these words are meant to help you succeed, not meant to help you necessarily fail or for me to just say I'm airing this off of my chest or I'm venting or something like that. I've seen so much of this that it's literally, it's not that big of a deal for me. It's a minor annoyance here and there. It's more I see a pattern developing with a lot of people, especially people who are new to comics, new to promoting their comic. And I want to make sure that they avoid some of these pitfalls that can make very bad first impressions for a lot of people. It's certainly, some of them take me back a bit. So I said, don't pitch submissions through social media. I've talked about this before, but over the course of the past week, since that show especially, and then also since I've mentioned that the Alterna submissions will be opening on April 10th, I've had quite a few people send me DMs or even tweets wanting to know more about the submission process or outright just sending in submissions. Almost as if they believe they could cut the line or here's a chance to schmooze or whatever it is. Wait until the guidelines are up. Wait until the submissions actually open. And not just, I would say honestly, that's not just for me, that's for any kind of publisher. That's a very strange way to go about it. You're making a bad impression immediately, being a little pushy, and you're also saying, hey, look, give me that attention. I deserve it. To hell with everybody else. And I don't appreciate that kind of attitude. I want somebody that understands the business side of it and the professional side of it, which is when the submissions open is when they open. So don't pitch submissions through social media. The biggest reasons I say that too, there's submission guidelines that need to be read and understood. They're not just written just to write them. They're written to also help you make an informed decision as a creator. Because if you're going to not know what those guidelines are, if you're not going to know what you're essentially maybe even getting yourself into, and you're just going to go and pitch me your project, your submission, and essentially say, hey, look, what does it take to get me on board at Alterna? But you don't know what that entails anyway, because you have no idea what we're looking for. You have no idea what those guidelines entail. It tells me quite a few things. And not many of them are good things. So wait until when submissions open, wait until the guidelines are up, and then submit your work. Don't invite yourself. This is something else I got, and it kind of touches upon what I was talking about earlier. Don't invite yourself onto other people's platforms that you're unfamiliar with. So I had a couple of people, not only they saw the video, or they had responded to that tweet with their pitches, but they were basically DMing or emailing me, can I get onto your show? I would take a look at their accounts. I would take a look at their YouTube. And again, I'm seeing a common thread here. I'm seeing people who, and this has happened time and time again. This didn't just happen over the past week. This has also happened with a lot of other people out there who do have a YouTube platform, or maybe a larger Twitter platform, or whatever it may be. People that are essentially, and I hate to say it like this, but this is how it comes across. You're blatantly trying to use someone. Very strange. Very strange to see that. I can't imagine just, you don't know who someone is, you've never talked to them really before, but you're basically saying, hey, look, can I come to your house? That's what that is. So let's create a real world scenario here. I'm at the comic shop and I see, I don't know, I'll say I see Todd McFarlane reading a comic. And I go, oh, hey, Todd McFarlane, big fan of your work. Check out mine. He goes, oh, looks nice. That's it, right? He goes, oh, looks nice. And I go, yeah, so how about you, retweeting this for me and have me on a YouTube show or whatever kind of show it is that you do, and get me some exposure for my stuff, so I can get some sales. I mean, you know how tough it is, right? That's a little awkward. Now, I'm sure that there's still some people out there that may do that, but that's essentially what you're doing when you approach someone out of the blue that you're not really familiar with, you haven't really had much of a conversation with, and you're essentially saying, yeah, but now let's have a conversation for an hour. I don't know who the heck you are. You don't know who I am, but can I invite myself over to your house to spend some time? Now, it's strange. Don't do that. I see a lot of creators that think that that's the way to do it. What you should do instead, it's a better use of your time and will get you invited onto other streaming platforms that do that. I don't really do that as much. It's an open forum on Comic Book Radio, which also tells you a bit about some of the creators. They want me to carve out a section of time that I don't maybe necessarily have and make that time for them, to help them succeed. And I'll get into a reason, again, why you don't want to do that too. Instead of doing those kinds of things, what you should do instead is build your own platform. And I don't say that in a term of saying, well, go do your own thing and don't interact with somebody else. Be around. Be within the chat of a show. Familiarize yourself with what that show may be. But more importantly, build your own platform. If YouTube is where you want to go to talk about your book, build your YouTube channel. Talk about your book on there. Talk about your characters. Talk about what's on your mind storytelling wise, or maybe even share something about yourself. Connect with your audience directly before you all of a sudden start trying to siphon someone else's audience in the hopes that that audience then supports what you're doing. Also, it's a really good way. I mean, there's a lot of people that I've had on over the years, even for open mic shows, where the 3 to 5 minutes is a harrowing ordeal. So people aren't necessarily maybe ready for an hour or so. I've noticed people can struggle sometimes with like even 3 to 5 minutes, or sometimes they'll be on this show or the feedback forum shows that I've done in the past. And it's like a deer in headlights kind of a thing. And bless them for getting over that, because it takes a lot. I get it. No one's a pro at this right away. I don't consider myself a pro at this either, for all it's worth. But you want to get used to talking. You want to get used to presenting your ideas, having those kinds of conversations. The worst thing you could do is when it's go time and now you're in campaign mode and every interview is going to count, and you're not used to doing any of those things. So again, build up your own channel, talk about your book on there. That's a place where you can spend as much or as little time as you want developing those things. You don't have to be at the mercy or dependent upon someone else's platform and channel and time and space and all that other kind of stuff. You can do what you want to do when you want to do it. So I recommend doing that instead. And now if you're someone who becomes more and more proficient in that, what happens is that you can direct someone to that channel. And essentially, when you do introduce yourself to see if they would like to have you on their show, you can say, here's my YouTube, so you can get a sense of who I am and what my book is about. That goes a very long way. A very long way. If I go to someone's page or accounts or whatever it is, when they're pitching at me to essentially promote them and be their, I hate to say it, but be their marketing department, essentially. And I see that they don't retweet anybody else. They don't really talk about anybody else's work. They don't make videos about their own work even. It really kind of gets me a little bit leery. And again, all of that is fine if you're someone who's not expecting other people to necessarily support you entirely. But if you are someone who, and I see it all the time, I see people who get very upset. They're usually new to this, everything about it, creating the comic, promoting the comic, everything. And I see people getting very upset and very hurt, and they feel slighted, and they feel like there's favoritism involved. There's nothing necessarily like that going on. I'm sure some people maybe, and I don't mean with me necessarily, and I'm sure some people do play favorites. That's just normal, natural life stuff. We all play favorites because we grow to know certain people, and certain people become people we like more than others. But when it comes to this kind of a thing, it's difficult to say that someone's playing favorites when no one knows who you are. So it's not so much as playing favorites as it is that they don't know who you are. So make sure they know who you are. Make sure other people know who you are. More importantly, not the people that are platforming you or anything like that, or might interview you, but your readers, your potential customers. Make sure that they know what you're about, who you are, what you're creating, what your thoughts are behind creating this work, why you feel you even need to create this work, all of that kind of stuff. Be open about it. I see a lot of creators that aren't comfortable with that. I see a lot of creators that's the last thing they even think of. Now, again, if you don't want to use YouTube, that's perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. So if you don't want to use YouTube to promote, then you need to find some other angle to promote. And I've said this before, not just on this show or to other creators, but I've also said this a lot to alternate creators too, because there's been a lot of alternate creators over the years who don't want to use YouTube. They don't want to be on any kind of YouTube show whatsoever. They're not comfortable with it for whatever reason. So in that way, you got to figure out, how do you get your point across? How do you share your work? Is it social media? Is it a newsletter? Is it a blog? Are you going to maintain your own site? What is that? Because you have to do something. You have to do something. We don't live in a time anymore where we have mass distribution of comics on a level where they're at every newsstand, every convenience store, every grocery store, and they're everywhere. So all you have to do is get with a certain publisher, let's say, and millions of your comics are out across the world. We unfortunately don't live in that time period anymore. We haven't lived in that time period for quite some time. But if you're an independent, you really need to carve out your own path and essentially state who you are, what you're about, what your book is about, what your characters are about. There's nothing bad with that. And hey, Stato, Edwin, Confucius, let's see, we got a couple other people in here, Bretsky, Jay Lee, Comics Mate, Nora and Rad, Logan, Effling, thank you guys for joining us. Agent Cub, I see you guys. Thank you so much for joining tonight. So it's all about carving out your own path. And by doing so, this is the irony here. By doing so, you'll actually get invited to more shows. You're networking in an organic, regular way. It's the equivalent of building actual relationships and friendships with people, or forcing yourself upon people and saying, no, you should be my friend. You must be my friend, and I must be your friend. That's not really how friendships work. So it's the same kind of way here. Does it take longer? Yes, it takes longer. That's why I don't recommend doing this as soon as you hit launch on your campaign. I recommend doing this for a while before that point in time, because then this way you'll be more set up to have actual normal, relatively organic relationships in place where you can have people not only on your show, but people will end up inviting you to their show, or they'll retweet you, and vice versa, and things like that. You want to try to give more than you take, especially when you're starting out. You want to be the person to first extend your hand for the handshake, introduce yourself, and not try to introduce yourself and in the same breath say, hey, my name is Peter. I'd like to take this from you today. That's a very strange way to introduce yourself. You want to make sure that you are presenting something where you say, look, this is the value that I can bring to the table here. It would mean a lot if you would have me on, but also let them know that I perfectly understand if your schedule's full. No hard feelings, and I appreciate your time. You'd be surprised how many people, when they're introducing themselves in something like that, where they're going to expect your time, effort, which is work, and in some cases your money, you'd be surprised how few people will actually end the request in a polite fashion. It's more of an assumption that this thing will work, and kind of a little bit of a guilt thing. How hard it is. I've been struggling with it, and it'd mean a lot if you did that. Okay, thanks. Don't do that. Don't do that. I know that might be the instinct to do something like that, but don't. Another piece of it, and all to me tonight, all of this is painfully obvious advice, but I think it might need to be said based on, especially over the past week of interactions I've had with some people after I evaluated and read those pitches last week. Something else. So I talked upon not inviting yourself onto other people's platforms, and I know that this mostly pertains to creators out there, especially, but I mentioned it a little bit before. Don't hinge your fate solely upon the support of others. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't need the support of others. Of course, you need the support of others. But if you're someone who's sitting there and waiting around to be invited, or hoping to be invited, or hoping to go out and do something with someone, essentially in terms of being a part of their group, their show, whatever it may be, if you keep on doing that, and you're not someone who's creating their own opportunities, you're not someone who's being proactive on that level, you're someone who's just being very passive about your own fate in terms of hoping that someone will carve out time for you, hoping that someone will allow you to be on their platform to talk about their stuff and who they are and what it is. If you're going to become that person, you're automatically going to start building resentment. You're going to automatically start building, I know I hate to put it like this, but you're going to start building a lower sense of self-esteem. It seems like that's not possible, but it is, because you're not going to develop the confidence that you need to actually talk about what it is that's going to make you a great guest on someone's show. And you're actually going to do something even more harmful for yourself, which is essentially never create your own brand of what it is you're doing and who you are. So you're completely playing into a system of failure. Essentially, you're setting yourself up for failure. And it doesn't mean that failure isn't going to happen. You're going to fail a lot more than you're going to succeed, trust me. But you're going to constantly find yourself in a bad position to fail. And you're already way behind where you should be, because you're always depending upon somebody else to lift you up and give you the shot you deserve. So you're coming in there with an attitude of entitlement. You're coming in there acting as if you're owed something already, And then if you do not receive what you believe you're owed, most people tend to lash out in some way, shape, or form, whether it's externally or internally. You could take this past even the sense of YouTube promotion. I think we see this. This is just human nature. We've seen this work out in one way or another with a lot of different people, a lot of different points in time. But instead, if you're trying your best to create your own opportunities, people respect that. People see that, and that speaks to them. That speaks to most people, because most people are doing that. Most people are trying to make the best of whatever cards they've been dealt with. Most people are trying to make the best of their situation in life. And when they see that you're doing the same, it inspires them to go, oh, okay, I'll check out what this person is up to. You're showing that you are someone who isn't just sitting there trying to, and again, I hate to use words like this, but the proper ones escape me right now, and I don't want to be soft with the language here, but that you're not trying to be someone that uses someone or a batch of someone's, but you're trying to actually give something of yourself to the world. You're trying to perhaps enrich someone else's life with your stories, your artwork, your whatever it may be, your thoughts on something, a viewpoint you may have on an issue, your thoughts on storytelling, on something that means something to you, whatever it may be. People respond to that. People respond to that. So again, if you're sitting there and you're feeling like you're in a rut, you're feeling like no one's giving you a shot, honestly, I hate to say it like this, but the only person you have to blame is yourself. Because you're not giving you a shot, but you're expecting everybody else to give you a shot. Something else I want to mention too is people who are not comfortable with being honest with themselves, but are comfortable with being honest with other people. So truly assess your work. Be just as honest with your own work as you would be with a work you may have purchased, whether that's comics or whatever it may be. Be honest about it. Now, you're going to still find yourself in positions sometimes where you are honest with it and you go, you know what, could have done better with this, but what's that saying? That don't, something about like, don't sacrifice the perfect for the good. Don't get so obsessed with making it perfect that even when it's good enough, you're still going, well, it's not truly good enough. It has to be perfect. And then it never gets out there. You never actually do the thing, and you never actually move on to the next thing and use the next thing as an opportunity to learn from what you previously just did. So be honest with yourself with what you need to work on. If you're someone that wants to be an artist in comics, you're going to have to draw anything and everything. Start doing that. Start filling up notebooks full of drawings of anything and everything. And not just people and not just faces or whatever it may be, but animals, backgrounds, nature scenes, buildings, cars, etc., etc., etc. And then even let your imagination kind of go nuts sometime and draw stuff that doesn't possibly exist in the world as we know it. If you're trying to be a writer, the best thing I could say is read, but don't just read like writing tip type of books, like self-help type of writer's guides and things like that. Don't just read comics. Don't just read about what someone has said about writing. Read about philosophy. Try to get a sense of all kinds of different kinds of dialogue. Read about history. Read about biographies. All these different things to develop yourself as a writer. Take a genuine interest in the world and what came before you. It'll make you a much stronger writer than any kind of writing guide you could possibly think of. Because if everyone's reading, and Fabrizio Aiello did a really good video on this, I want to talk to him about this too. See, look at that. He did a good video about it, and I want to talk to him about what he talked about. That's how it works. He talked about how there's so many people, and I agree with him on this, there's so many people that put out these different writing guides. But there's even more people who read them and start learning what they will soon incorporate into their own writing, they start learning it all from these resources. And pretty soon you get a generation or two or three, and everyone's been looking to the same resources to do the same things, and now everyone's stuff pretty much is the same formula. So again, expose yourself to different kinds of writing and philosophies and biographies and historical figures and, fantasy, sci-fi, horror, comics, whatever it may be. Take it all in. There's a lot to learn from. And that's going to honestly end up making you a better writer than going out there and purchasing some kind of writing guide. So I have one other thing to get to, but before we do that, and it has to do with this topic, I'm going to invite one of our guests on here. Popped in. Hey, what's up, Preston?
What's up?
Hey, how are you doing, my friend?
Pretty good. Working, actually. But I heard the subject you was talking about people like insisting that they get on your platform and promote their work. And yeah, that's a bad way to go ahead and and get your stuff out there.
Yeah, you get off on an awkward start right away.
Well, what I did a show on that, like an episode of Art of Survival Tactics, and I told people like the best way to do that is to go ahead and draw characters, like do what you do best. You know what I'm saying? And people will take notice if it's good. And actually, like if you want to get with Alterna, like start drawing Alterna characters and just post it. Like don't worry about getting paid right away. Just kind of do it, and have fun doing it. And it usually works out,
Well, yeah, I mean, especially when it comes to anything that's creator-owned, too. If you're looking to either get hired or whatever it may be, whether it's a cover or something like that, because most creators at Alterna aren't hiring talent to draw their books. They already have like a creative team established. Some are. Like every now and then I'm looking for a new King Cryptid artist or whatever it may be. But that is a really good point, because you're at least going to get the attention of that individual, especially when it's an indie creator, because everyone has seen Batman and Spider-Man and whatever else. But, if you were to draw, and you have drawn beautiful work of characters at Alterna, it really gets the attention of the creators that are at Alterna.
That's kind of how it worked when I first got into CG, was like I didn't know anybody. You know what I'm saying? And it felt weird, like being like, hey, put me on your show and just doing this like infomercial for an hour or something like that, So what I did was I drew other people's characters and I just posted it, not worrying about getting paid, but eventually you do get paid if it's good, and you instill goodwill with other creators. You know what I'm saying? And they want to help you out at that point. It's not like they feel like they have to, And I don't know, it's just my 2 cents on it, but.
Yeah, no, I mean that's pretty accurate, because again, you're building relationships in an organic way. You're not forcing yourself upon somebody. You're not guilting them. No. You're not saying this is a purely transactional relationship right here, which in any kind of business scenario, those relationships start to become very tiresome when it becomes this constant, quid pro quo of like, I scratch your back, you scratch mine, etc. And then one day all of a sudden you're like, look, that one doesn't speak to me. I can't scratch your back on this one. And all of a sudden there's this weird kind of attitude and the whole thing falls apart. And it's like mob. It's like the nerdiest mob there is. So don't put yourself in those situations, because again, you're setting yourself up eventually for failure, for heartbreak, for frustration. And I've been there. I'm not just saying this from stuff I've observed. I'm saying this from stuff that I've been through, stuff that I've seen, mistakes I've made over the years. I've been doing this for 17 years. So I'm not coming at this from a point of wisdom through watching other people's mistakes. I'm coming at this saying, look, I've made some of these mistakes. Don't repeat these mistakes. These are bad mistakes.
I think that because Alterna is successful, that's a living testament that you have been through all these trials and kind of survived them and learned from them. You know what I'm saying? Instead of just, I don't know, it's just weird, like as far as that kind of stuff goes. And I think if it feels wrong, it most likely is wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. It's always interesting to me, because and again, this is more recent, but this has happened a lot over the years. Someone will come along and their project has either failed on crowdfunding or it's doomed for failure. They have like maybe like a $10,000 goal and there's a week left and they've raised like $500. And then they come along with all this swagger and all this kind of, chest puffery, and they're trying to impress me and be like, look, I got a lot of great ideas that I think Alterna would really benefit from. Yeah. And then I look at their projects and I'm like, you can't even benefit from what you're doing for yourself. How am I supposed to figure out a way to benefit from that? So it's one of those things of, look, be honest with yourself. Stop trying to constantly be in a state of mind of fake it till you make it. I know that's a big thing that a lot of people do. But it is more, you're going to get where you want to get to faster by being honest with yourself and others and being more and more open towards being you in wherever that may be, whether that's Twitter, whether that's a newsletter, whether that's YouTube, and developing that. I know we hear this a lot, man, right? About the whole build your own platform and, make sure you're actually also doing something too. But it's so true. And that's the reason why that people say it a lot. It's not that people are trying to shirk any kind of sense of helping out somebody else, but you don't want to really be in a position where you're constantly helping people who don't want to even help themselves.
That's true. Sometimes you just got to give up on those people. Now, I will say this, like the whole thing about go out and build your own platform, get 1,000 subscribers. That's not easy. You know what I'm saying? And it's kind of like there's different ways to go about it. And if you can go about it that way, then do it. By all means, do it. But a lot of people can't successfully build a platform that way. They have to instill goodwill with other creators and other people who have platforms. But it's funny. I have a friend of mine, well, a pretty good friend of mine that he never worked for the big two, but he worked for a lower company like IDW or Valiant or something like that. And he thought because he worked for these people that when he ran his crowdfunding campaign, he was going to make $70,000 right off the bat. He didn't have to follow any of the rules as far as like promoting your project from the beginning, and instilling goodwill with other creators so that they'll help you push your product, because you're always going to help people you like. You're not going to help people that just scratch your back.
Yeah. Yep.
And he failed twice, and he never launched another campaign after that. Because you can, like, I think people, like, they get this false bravado, that they pump themselves up on the inside.
Yep.
And they instill like greatness in themselves, but it's false. Like it's all bogus. And then when reality slaps them in the face, then they're bitter about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. It goes back to what I was talking about with being honest with yourself and others when it comes to this kind of thing. And it's okay. It's okay to come across like you're not the biggest expert in everything, or you're not winning every single time you play the game. You're not smashing a homer out of the field. It's okay. It's okay. If anything, it's relatable because
exactly.
we all know how difficult things can be sometimes. We all know that not everything that you try to do in life works out, especially spectacularly. It's rare, and people respond to that.
Doc Salem failed the first time out, like completely, incredibly, and it was, I fell down for like a month, but at some point you got to pick yourself up, analyze what went wrong, what mistakes you made, and then fix them and redo it. The platform thing wasn't something I was good at. I'm good at drawing stuff. And painting stuff. That's what I'm good at. So I capitalized on that,
Absolutely.
And, it worked out.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, you do great work. And I said it before, I said it twice now. This is the third time. I got to get that King Cryptid. I'm already getting things together for the next batch of issues. And I got to get that King Cryptid you did because I want to make that a back cover.
To you right now.
So that would look great on the back cover of one of the issues, where the issues are a front cover and then the back cover you flip it over and it looks like you get two covers for the price of one issue.
Definitely.
but the main front cover always goes to the interior artist. So
I
it's not a slight on Preston's work. It's more just a respect issue.
No,
for
I
the
can
interior
definitely
artist.
respect that. Those interior artists work their butts off getting that
Yeah.
stuff out.
And hopefully, you know, wink, wink. You know, hopefully we get Preston on an interior job one day for a King Crypto
down.
issue. I got a lot of issues to tell. So
I told you I got a huge amount of respect for Alterna.
But this is the kind of thing. This is what I'm talking about. This is what you see it in action here. So I've known Preston for good Lord, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, something like that. You know, we've talked on and off again a few dozen times. You know, and you've done a cover for Alterna with it came out on Wednesday, number 19. You've been on the Alterna auctions. You've done a lot of different like fan art and everything. You read the books. You're always polite and professional in every interaction I've had business wise. All of that stuff adds up and it builds. It's not about, you know, just the floodgates open up today. There's one first time interaction. It takes a while. And I don't know if Preston was doing the Irish goodbye there, but either way, thank you for joining, Preston. Appreciate it. But it's that kind of a thing. So that's what I'm talking about. Build those. It looks like he just skipped out for a second, but came back. But no problem. But it's that kind of thing. That's what you want to really focus on if you're out there watching.
And people should know that I got rejected by Alterna many times. many times. Like, and it's, you can't hold, like, if you're going to be a real professional, two things: you can't hold stuff like that against the person that's rejected, because they're rejecting you for a reason. You know what I'm saying? And also, if you get offended when people criticize you, then you really shouldn't be in this field.
Oh yeah, I mean, if anything, every time I open my mouth, tweet something, or create a book, I expect a criticism to be, you know, thrown at me, and I'm grateful that over the years, even when it's been sometimes I've unleashed the gates of hell upon myself, I'm grateful that overall I've largely had way more positive interactions than negative. But it's still that kind of thing where, you know, it's a nice surprise when someone comes along and has something nice to say or supportive to say. I don't expect that from anyone. That's not the reason I'm creating something, is to get a validation from someone about something. If you're constantly putting yourself in a state where, again, I mentioned this before, but if you're constantly feeling like you're entitled to someone's time, someone's money, someone's work, if they're going to have you on their show to promote whatever it is you're doing, that's you saying, work for me right now. Yeah. If I was to respond back and go, okay, well, I'll have you on my show to promote your campaign. Everything you make as of this point forward, I want 10%. You think that person would go, oh yeah, I'll still do your show? They'll be like, what the? They'll call me unreasonable, you know? And I'll go, okay, fine, 5%. I'll be nice. You know? So it's one of those things where it's like, no, well, you're making it a cold business transaction here, where you're looking to use someone's platform to make money and kind of just fly away again. And there is no kind of sincerity here. There's no genuine relationship being developed. It's literally just, this is business, right? So you should be met then with a business proposition. But of course, most people would be very upset by that.
They would, but I wonder how that would go over, because I mean, guys like Ethan, and I remember back in the day with Sweetcast, like if you went on either one of their shows and you're promoting your book, you were easily going to make $5,000. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was an automatic 5K. And I don't know. I mean, that's interesting that you would say
I don't know. I'm not the kind of person who would put that proposition forth.
No.
Because then I'm going to also have to start the show being like, just so you guys all know, this is essentially a paid sponsorship right now, and everything that we say here is basically tailored towards that. All of a sudden,
the lawyers involved.
And the market starts shifting more towards, you can't trust certain platforms and certain people what they say, because everything becomes a shill. So again, it's a game that then backfires very quickly. So that's why you want those genuine connections. You want that genuine support. Last week, when I had some kind things to say about a couple of the pitches, I tried to be very concise and explicit in terms of saying, this isn't necessarily my feelings on the book itself or the overall whatever it may be. This is the pitch. This is me evaluating the pitch. But some people I noticed they were creeping in the DMs and sending emails and trying to run with that and saying, oh, you had really nice things to say about it. Can you retweet my campaign for me? And it's like, whoa, okay, first of all, I already spent some time talking about it and highlighting it and essentially promoting it for you. But now it's like you want more. And then you want to invite yourself onto the show. And there's several people that did that last week. And it was, I felt like, you know what, should I say this? Should I not say this? I've seen a lot of this stuff happen over the course of 17 years, especially over the course of the past 5 or 6 since I've had like a YouTube show and since others have been using YouTube more to promote their own work. But recently with that happening based off of that kind of a thing, which was purely to help somebody out, it was a bit jarring to see that. It was kind of like, you give an inch and someone wants to take a mile.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. And one thing I've always said about you actually was that, and I've always been anti-publisher, because back before CG, publishers would say they'll publish a book, but they would not promote it, and that was always weird to me, because if the book makes money, you make money, and if it doesn't, well, you don't either. But one thing I like about Alterna is that you actually get on your YouTube channel and you promote every book in your lineup, and you make sure that you explain what the book's about, you push it out, and that shows a lot of character as far as like what a publisher should be.
Yeah, and I want all the creators there. So regardless of whether or not anyone has ever seen all the creators at Alterna promoting, you're seeing the tip of the iceberg of what happens behind the scenes. I want the creators there talking about their stuff, not just on the show, but also building their own platforms too. I want them engaging with the readers. I want them being excited and talking about the books that they're creating, the characters that they're making. Some creators over the years have been more enthusiastic about that process than others, but I always strongly encourage it. And in some cases, I've gone toe-to-toe in some very heated arguments with creators about trying to get them to realize that they need to care about their work. I'm baffled by some of the people over the years that the things I've had to say, that I'm like, I shouldn't care more, far more. At least superficially to the public, what the reader would see, I shouldn't care far more about your work and your characters than you. You're the creator. It's essentially like if I say that I care more about someone and how they're raising their child than even they do. That would be that's strange. You should care. You should care more than anybody else.
It's a good analogy. You know what I'm saying? Because that's exactly the way it is. Because if people only knew how much work these creators put into their books, I'm not just talking about writing,
and that's exactly why. Yeah, everything. It's a lot of time, energy, and money.
I do realize like a lot of people don't have a stage presence. Like they can't just get on there and be like, "Hey, this is the greatest thing ever." But you have to at least try, and show that you care. I don't get that. That's crazy.
Yeah, and it's even if you don't want to be showy about it, but if you deliver a sense of earnestness, if you deliver that honesty, if you're more of a quiet person, but what you're talking about is resonating because of the fact that you're delivering it in a way that shows that you care, that you're invested in what you're doing, that you care about what you're doing, people are going to respond to it. It's going to help you more than hurt you. And likewise, if you're a very showy person and you put on an entire act, the audience is really going to see a lot of that, and it's going to turn into this like, wow, this person is a fake. I don't want to support him. So it's always good. Be honest. If you feel really up and you're really enthusiastic and energetic tonight, be that way. If you feel like, you know what, I just want to lay it out tonight and let's keep it real, be that way too. But there's a lot of people that feel like I have to constantly be in a state of whatever it is that someone else out there wants me to be. But what they want you to be is you. They want you to be you.
Yeah. No, that's strange. People are more likely to back somebody that is involved in a passion project than somebody involved in a money grab. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it kind of sounds like that's what that's kind of what you ran into. Is a lot of people just put a book out there so they can make a quick buck, because they've seen like these campaigns.
Yeah.
Really well.
Well, especially in the earlier days too at Alterna, when it was a lot of we relied primarily on distribution, and this is another thing where I say to not solely rely upon someone else for your success. I don't just mean that with YouTube. So this is what I'm talking about in terms of what I've been through with a distributor, with all the distributors we worked with. When you start off and you go the traditional road, you're essentially told straight out from the distributor, if you start doing personal sales, if you make your own web store, if you sell at conventions, just be aware it's going to cannibalize into the sales at the distributor, and then that's going to lower your chances of reaching a benchmark. So you might get dropped. No. So they discourage you largely from wanting to build your own platforms, sell the books elsewhere, do all these various things in which they are not involved in. And that, of course, sets you down a road for failure. And they don't care because the next sucker to come along is 5 minutes after you just got here. So they don't really care about your long-term success.
That's a really good point, because I remember like previews, like for indie comics, like you would get a space this big, in previews. And like and everybody thought like previews was the golden ticket. You getting previews.
Oh yeah, you get in previews, you're in every shop, and yeah.
But I talked to a lot of comic shop owners, and they told me like they just flip through all the indie books and go straight to Marvel and DC. Like they don't pay attention.
Oh yeah, yeah. 80 to 85% of the stores easily do that. Yeah.
I'm surprised Alterna had such a success with being in previews. Like it's. But I guess you had a big lineup too, so they can't just ignore. When you got a couple of pages.
Well, I mean, not at first. So the first 10 to 11 years, we were predominantly putting out graphic novels and trades. Even though they were still graphic novels, these stories were more compiled and put out as a paperback, perfect bound. But then in 2017, we started with the single issues and the affordable price points and things like that. Before, books were pretty much on par for what a graphic novel was, between $10 to $20, depending on the size. A lot of them were black and white too for the first probably 8 years or so. Yeah. So with previews, on that level, we maybe had a book out in previews once every 2 months, maybe 6 books a year. We saw more sales at that point from the book market. Yeah. That's why we did the sizing of 6x9. It just made more sense because we made more money through the book market. Graphic novels weren't really everywhere. They were definitely, there's a lot of them, but it wasn't like it is now, where it feels like every 6 issues turns into a trade. Regardless of how impactful that storyline is, or popular, or the sales, or whatever it is, every single thing pretty much ends up becoming a trade in some way, shape, or form. At that point, it was, the classics. You get Dark Knight Returns and Dark Phoenix Saga and all that kind of stuff that was like the book,
See, that's
the storyline. And then it started shifting big time around 2010.
I didn't realize you guys were thinking outside the box like that.
Oh yeah, everyone for the first 3 or 4 years when we were putting that out, they were like, "That's insane. No one's just going to buy a graphic novel straight up from an indie publisher. You got to put single issues out." And then, and even retailers would say the same thing. That's why we did far better through the book market than we did through the comic shop. They said, how are we supposed to sell your graphic novel? We don't have single issues to build it up and to justify ordering these graphic novels. So we would get like maybe 2,000 sold through the book distributor, but we would get 300 sold through comic shops. And then it started turning worse around 2012 to 2014, and I started noticing things started plateauing because the whole market with graphic novels in the bookstores was getting flooded. All the people, all the different websites, all the whatever that were trying to say Alterna was going to go under for doing that strategy. I see all these publishers and all these sites singing the praises of everybody that was going straight to graphic novel with things, or putting everything to a trade, flooding the market like crazy. By the time 2015 rolls around, I'm seeing turnaround going from 6 months to a year, going to a month to 2 months on a graphic novel. So if your book didn't really sell, the stores are running out of space to put these in. So unless you paid for that spot, which many big publishers do, and that's why they'll see certain books there for forever. Scholastic buys up whole end caps and whatnot too. if you were a publisher like Alternative that wasn't paying for their spot, because if we paid, we pretty much made almost nothing. We got kicked out after a month or two. So I'm like, they're treating us like we're floppies on the newsstand, but these things cost way more than floppies on a newsstand. Yeah. And they shouldn't just be, I mean, looking at 500 to 600 copies, get destroyed, because they get destroyed. They go back and they go to the distributor. They don't ship them nicely for resale. They just chuck them in a box, and then they go to the distributor. And eventually I told the distributor, stop destroying them, send me the damages, we'll do something with it. And that probably happened around 2018.
Oh, I've ordered some damage.
Yeah. So we sold through the majority of our damages through our own site. And then even then, because of Diamond's mishandling of all of the reorders, we lost about 16,000 reorders over the 3 years we had the newsprint issues through Diamond. That's what spawned me to go, let's sell direct. And so we had that Etsy store, then it turned into that was doing so well we didn't need to be on Etsy. Then we had our own store, and now that's what we're doing. And now it's crowdfunding and we don't have any distributor whatsoever.
Yeah.
So the evolution of that stuff occurred, but we had to go through all of those growing pains to evolve the way we did. And again, it goes back to what I'm talking about tonight. You can't force these kinds of developments. You can't force these kinds of learning experiences. You have to go through them. You have to test whatever avenue that you think may work for you, and then assess it. Hopefully, assess it before it's too late. But I find that with the comic shops, the comic industry overall, is that there's a very, I don't know, it's stubborn. It's worse than stubborn in terms of the refusal to assess things that are going wrong and course correct.
Well, you're right. But one thing I've noticed, everything you just said was like the other companies were focusing on how to deliver the package when you were just trying to make a really quality product and putting it out there. And it doesn't, and that's what I've always thought too. If it's really good, people are going to buy it, and it doesn't matter, what it's printed on, because honestly, I prefer newsprint. I like newsprint. Newsprint.
Oh yeah, me too.
It's classic. It's got that comic shop smell, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it doesn't matter if it's a floppy or a graphic novel. If it's good, people are going to pick it up. And I don't know. It's I think that's wrong. What's wrong with modern comics is that they're so focused on making a statement that they've neglected to pay attention to what kind of quality they're putting into the story and the art.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a whole topic for another show. But yeah, there's a lot of reasons, for that. Some that I know, and then some that I'm kind of expounding upon and guessing at with really good guesses. But it really is. Either way, the storytelling part of it really suffers. And as we see over the years, the decline of the industry in terms of who gets to work in the industry, that suffers as well.
That's ridiculous.
It's a lot of it's a false economy. So it's essentially, what I mean by that is essentially saying that, okay, so we'll save pennies today at the expense of dollars tomorrow. So they're going to hire talent that's desperate, talent that's new, talent that isn't really aware of what they're getting into. They're hungry, literally and figuratively, and so they're going to work for practically nothing. I mean, I know of publishers that are in the top 5 that they're paying $20 a page.
Most of that's out of country too.
Oh,
people with a really
some
bad
of them,
economy.
A lot of them I know of work here.
Really?
Yeah, there's 2 artists I know of personally that they don't work for these companies anymore. But one of them lives in Maryland, the other one lived in Pennsylvania, and both of them were working for a top 5 publisher for $20 a page on a book that was selling 20,000 copies.
That kind of explains the art, though. If you notice, it's almost the exact same art style in every book, where it's this quick, shading with this super quick line art, and it looks kind of realistic, but really, I mean, if you really look at it, it's just really cheap, quick and dirty art.
Yeah.
I don't know. And you notice too, they're covering that art up with a really pretty cover.
Yeah. A lot of the time. Yeah, there's that bait and switch kind of stuff going on in the comic industry, especially at the larger publishers, especially. Yeah. So again, that's a whole topic for a completely different episode. But there's so many things going on in the industry that it's not creating a sustainable industry for anybody. Most of the books that are being published right now and distributed, I'd say probably 80% of them easily, 80%, no one's making money on those books. And when we were through the system, we weren't making money on those books either. So it's one of those things where you go in there and go, well, why is this system the way it is when it's so utterly broken? And eventually, just like the way it is in the world, you have to go, oh, because this is the system. It's supposed to be this way. So it's not broken at all. It works perfectly fine. It just isn't working for a lot of the people who are in it. But that's the point. So, once you kind of go, okay, well, if the system's truly broken like that and it's not working for me, I have to get outside of that system and do something else. And that's what so many creators are doing nowadays. And God bless them. It's like you're seeing a whole revival here in a way of comics, an indie boom. Not just even CG, but there's so many other facets of comics that are taking it to this entrepreneurial road where they're doing things that are direct to the reader. Maybe they'll sell to retailers, but they're not dependent upon the retail distribution system, and they have the freedom to make what they want to make, and they're making clearly more than they would have made through distribution.
It feels like an evolution, like a natural evolution of the industry.
It is, yeah, especially with the way things are in the world. Essentially, it makes more sense to have people that are becoming more self-efficient in that front. You're always going to have publishers, you're always going to have these kinds of things, but at the same time, if you're someone who that system isn't working for you, don't feel like you have to stay in that system. You don't have to stay in this bad thing that's essentially keeping you down and maybe clipping your wings.
Honestly, I don't think there would be a Marvel Comics if they wasn't backed by Disney. It just wouldn't be. It wouldn't exist. They're not bringing in the cash to be able to keep it going.
If both companies, DC's been owned by Warner Brothers for such a longer time, and then Warner Brothers is now owned by what has been like 4 owners in the past 10 years. If both of them were no longer subdivisions of very large conglomerate media companies at this point, they would not be around. They would have to reinvent the system or do it so differently to continue to be a publisher of current comics. They can always. And I think this is going to go this way. I think it's going to go down the road more towards event-style comics that coincide with the release of a film or some kind of merchandising, and then republishing, repackaging, reprinting issues that came out before. I mean, both of them have such a deep catalog of material that they could stop publishing new comics today. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Please do that. And just continuously reprint and republish and repackage everything that you've ever done, starting from square one.
It's basically going to be a dead company just walking around like a zombie.
It'll. And I honestly think that that's how it's essentially going to be. And if you're a comic creator and the medium of comics means something to you, and creating stories and characters means something to you, you should know absolutely by now, I would hope, that you don't need the bigger publishers or even any publisher really to get your story out there. Be enterprising with it, innovate, adapt to what's going on with how you can get your stuff out there. And especially if you're lucky enough that you worked at these companies and you could take your fan base, hopefully, that enjoyed your work at those companies and bring them over to what it is you're doing on your own. So many creators, so many established creators, I find that they can't, it's kind of like your story that you had. So many of them can't manage to figure out how to bring those fans that really love their work at one of these major companies and support their independent work.
It's kind of like those, like ever since Image. And I kind of feel this way too. Like they've been burying creators ever since the Image revolution. Back in the '90s. Because I was telling you about my friend that worked on a couple of titles for IDW and Valiant. Like he was he thought he had a definite fan base that would follow him, but nobody knew his name because they weren't in the business of promoting him. They were in the business of promoting the books. Yep. And which is far different than what it was in the 90s when it was like meet Rob Liefeld, at blah blah blah, promoting the newest Marvel book. They don't do that anymore. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, no, 100% true. And that's why, again, I stress that time and time again. If you're a creator, build your platform, build your brand. And your brand doesn't necessarily have to be like a separate imprint or whatever else, because then you're going to start confusing your readers. But your brand has to just be, Preston. And I do this, and this is my book, and these are my characters. They're published by so and so, but this is mine. And it's that kind of a thing. And then you'll always make sure that even if you end up parting ways with that publisher for whatever reason, they associate that book is still, oh yeah, that was Preston's book at the publisher, not the publisher's book. And who the hell made that book again?
Exactly.
That happens to so many creators, and I always try to encourage that all the time, that even if there's a creator that has had the worst breakup with me in alternate history, if they at least listen to me to build up their own brand and make sure that people know that what they create and what they work on, they'll at least be able to utilize the time that they had here, and hopefully keep those readers and do right by them and get their stories out.
You see, that's why I always like the alternative. Is because you actually care about the people that not work for you, but that produce the IPs that are under the alternate umbrella, and it's not like that at any other indie publisher out there. I can't name one indie publisher that gives a shit about any of the books underneath their umbrella, unless it's by somebody famous like Zombie Tramp or something like that. Then they care. But other than that, they do not care.
Yeah, it's a sad state. It really is. Let's see. Spiral Mind. Thank you for the kind comment, man. It says, Pete, I'm so my publishing partner. I'm so glad my publishing partner recommended your channel. Keep up the stellar work. You got a fan in Spiral Mind. I appreciate that, Spiral Mind. Thank you.
You should write a book. I'm
when I'm old and can no longer get things together for King Cryptid, but we'll see. Aloise, let's see. Aloise asks, could you explain the alternate submission guidelines? I'm gonna have a whole show dedicated on that on April 10th. April 10th on Alterna Comics, the channel on YouTube. Before that point in time, though, I'm just going to end up repeating myself a million times about the submission guidelines. So stay tuned. April 10th is when those submissions open up, and April 10th is when I'm going to do an entire show that night about those submission guidelines. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, it's interesting to see how many people still think there's an easy button for things, that there's every single interaction with someone is a potential lotto scratch ticket. You know what I mean? That if you just scratch this person's back the right way, all of a sudden it leads you to the $1 million jackpot. And it's just, don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. Don't do that to other people. You're doing it the wrong way. It's literally Three Little Pigs. If you're going to build that house of sticks and straw, don't expect it to last when the tough times hit your way because you didn't build it out of brick. Yeah, it's a pain in the ass to build it out of brick. Yeah, it takes a lot longer. It's a lot of work, but it's going to last. The other two, I don't know. So, and that's the whole, I don't know if people understand the moral of that story sometimes. But it's not just about pigs and wolves and, bacon and stuff. But it is that type of thing. If you're expecting it to constantly come easy to you, and you don't really want to put in that work and that effort, really don't be surprised. I've said it before. Don't be surprised if you're putting in less than part-time work and not getting more than full-time results. You got to really, and even then, right, we see people in the industry, or in any industry really, that are like the top tier kind of, you could sign a napkin and make $100 that day, But why? Why would that signature on that napkin be worth $100 to anybody? Because they put in an enormous amount of time and energy and work to do that. So even people that go, Preston, with your work, why? I've had people go, wow, man, like, you see his work, it's incredible. I can't believe how much it sold for and this and that. And I'm like, why? I could believe it. Look at, and they're not putting you down, but because they could never sell that level.
No, I've
and it's, yeah. And it's, look at it. It's beautiful. Look how much work he put into it. It's not easy to get to that level. That takes years and years and years. That's why there's value in it.
Well, people complained about Jim Lee charging $10,000 for a headshot or something like that at a con. But you got to realize, like, Jim Lee's been in this business for like 20 years, and he also,
oh Lord, 40.
Yeah,
Can you believe it?
and he used to like he'll tell you there was times the only time he got to sleep was on the subway going to the Marvel offices. Like he didn't get it. Like he sacrificed a lot to get to where he was. And I'm talking like relationships, family, everything to get where he is actually.
Yeah. So it really it's the pros cons of whoever it is, like them, don't like them, whatever. They all have the same thing in common. They put in the time, they put in the effort, they put in the work. And sometimes you might see people that maybe you think they have too much success and they didn't really seem to put in that work. Don't worry. Their success, their 15 minutes of fame, that's kind of all it really is. It's not going to have the same long-lasting appeal as if you were to go in there, put in the time, the effort, the work, continue to improve, build things the right way, and then all of a sudden, before you know it, and this has happened to me, 10, 20 years goes by and you're like, oh yeah, remember so-and-so? Yeah, they seem like they were, the next big thing. Now where the hell are they? There's so many people like that I can tell you about from 17 years ago. So many publishers, so many creators where, they're being praised by whoever. And where were they after 5 or 10 years? So it's that kind of thing. Don't sit there and compare your progress, your success, your skill level, whatever it may be, to somebody else's. Keep building up what you got to do. Keep doing things the right way. I know sometimes it looks like it's a pain in the ass. No one's paying attention to you. You're kind of screaming into the void. But seriously, all the other avenues of trying to get to where you think you want to be at, they're not going to work out. And it's not going to work out the way you want it to work out. You got to put the time, you got to put in the work.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy. But like my grandparents used to say, if it was easy, it's not worth doing.
Oh, and if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. I mean, how many people are like, oh, that so-and-so athlete or something is getting paid all that to throw a ball? Yeah, you're right. You should go do that. It's like, if that's all it is, why don't we all go just throw a ball and,
Plus,
make millions of dollars?
Talent's not enough either. Like, you really got to put a lot of work in. You got to also be talented and put a lot of work in to get where you want to go. Talent's never going to carry you the whole way.
Yeah. And even when you have the talent, you still got to hone in on the talent. And then all of a sudden, before you know it, someone else just came along who's more talented and is working harder than you. And you just thought you were the most talented and you were the hardest working. And you're like, shit, I got to up my game. I mean, that happens all the time. So this isn't a situation where anyone should feel like they're owed something, they're entitled to something, they're putting themselves constantly in the state of being a victim of the world and circumstance and whatever it is. We all get dealt the cards we're dealt. We see this way too much in modern times in terms of like, you can just blame all of everything that came before you on why you're at where you are today. Yeah, you could do that. Is that going to help you do a damn thing? Is that really in the long run going to help you do a damn thing? Or are you going to still be just as miserable and just as awful and just as sick inside as you were the day before or the day before that or whatever it is? But if you start taking that effort for working on what you're doing, working especially in a way that is towards something substantial, trying to make a positive impact on the world around you and in the lives of others, you'd be surprised. All of a sudden things start changing. It might take some time, but you need that, and people need that. And anyway, with that, Preston, seriously, thank you so much for joining me, buddy. I'm going to end the show here. Always a pleasure talking to you, man. Really, really love it. Everybody, Preston's got a lot of great work. If you guys aren't aware, do you have a channel or anything you want to promote before you say goodbye?
I do, but I haven't paid attention to it for a while, so don't worry about it right now.
Nothing at all. Nothing whatsoever. Nothing whatsoever.
Check out my Twitter. I'm always posting stuff on there. So it's at Nicky the Pipe on Twitter.
Okay, so at Nicky the Pipe on Twitter.com. So thank you so much, Preston, and all the best, buddy.
You too.
All right, everybody, take it easy. Before we go, I do want to say thank you. We got on King Cryptid at 38,510. Thanks so much to the help of the backers, of course, but also it was largely in part because Ethan Van Sciver was so nice enough to have me on his channel a few days back. And it was nice to talk to everybody again on there. I had a fun time with all the different campaigns and whatnot, and helped to get 60 new backers that night. We are very, very close now to 40,000 on it, but what's more important than that is this. So fulfillment updates. The last update here was 3/31, and there's a good reason for that, because on the 31st of March, those 4 issues of King Cryptid shipped out from the printer and are on their way here. I'm supposed to get a call tomorrow to schedule a delivery. Hopefully that delivery will arrive Friday. As soon as it arrives, no matter what day that might be, I'm going to be fulfilling this campaign, getting these books out to you guys, and I seriously can't wait. I cannot wait. This book is means a lot, and it means a lot that you guys have supported this, have joined me on this journey. It's going to be a long journey. I got a lot of issues and stories to tell here, and we're going to start that 5 to 9 campaign. That's right, 5 issues. That's going to be in June of this year. So once everybody has all their stuff, then I'm going to launch that next campaign. But thank you guys so very much for your support on this, and I can't wait to get these into your hands. Oh my Lord, if you guys have even half the amount of fun as I had creating it, you're going to enjoy those issues. So everybody, thanks so much once again. Everybody, really, really great seeing you here. Thank you for all the support. It means a lot. And everyone, to have a great night. Yes, it's nice to see Preston is still alive. Preston's a good dude. Everybody, have a wonderful night, and I will see you tomorrow on Graham Nolan's channel. I've been invited by the wonderful Graham Nolan to talk on his channel on his Storytellers show. That's at 8 o'clock Eastern. So I'll be there, and hopefully you will be too. Everybody, have a great night, and I'll see you tomorrow on Graham Nolan's. Everyone, take it easy.